What is up, everybody? Happy Friday. I'm so happy to be here and to see you guys. I've been grinding away on a new deck, and with Melinda Livesey's help, we are here. We're finally here, and we're going to I can't even talk right now. We're going to talk today about how to reach 200,000 people and get 634 follows on Instagram from doing just one post. And you see this little clock? I did this post in 20 minutes. Hard to believe. I'm going to get into it. And if you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome. My name is Chris Doe. I host content just like this, and today we're going to be focused on Instagram. And if you're a regular person to the show and you like the short cut down content, go ahead and skip this video right now because we're going to go deep. It may take an hour, it may take 2 hours, I don't know. So that's the fair warning up front. Let's get into it. Okay, so the post that I'm talking about is this one right here. And the post looks something like this. And all you see are text. There are no images. There's nothing here except for text. And yet, this thing, here are the stats, and this was saved a couple days ago, so the stats will probably change a little bit, but you can see that it's gotten me 634 follows for one post, and the reach is almost at 200,000 right there. And so, how did I make this, and how can you make this more importantly, and what have I learned in doing this? So I want to share with you guys a little bit about the origin story about this post in itself. It started out as a conversation that we did here on a segment we call After Hours, and we invite people and we have a conversation. And during that conversation, there was this whole idea about faking it till you make it. And it was bothering some of the people, and so that's when I started to talk about, I know that the word fake it sounds awful. It sounds like you're a fraud, that you're an imposter, that you're cheating somebody, that there's a lot of deception involved in there. So I helped to reframe that phrase and say, instead of thinking it like fake it till you make it, maybe you should think about it as believe it till you achieve it. And we finished the live stream and everything was fine. But then I noticed people commenting and also sharing on social media the phrase believe it till you achieve it. So I knew I struck a chord. So in that hour-and-a-half live stream, something jumped out. And this is the first clue as to what you should be doing. If you pay attention to your community, if you have a conversation with them and you listen to them, they will tell you what they want to see more of. So I thought, this is cool. People are already sharing it on Instagram and also on Twitter. Maybe I should do the same. So then I took that little phrase, I wrote a little bit more to it, and I posted it on Twitter. And then that post started to get more likes. And I was watching this and thinking, okay, maybe I need to convert that post from Twitter to Instagram. But I didn't know how to take a very short phrase and make it something that can fit in a 10-slide carousel, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So how do you take a video clip, condense it down to what's important, put it on Twitter, test the idea, and then convert that idea into a slide carousel? And that's exactly what I did here. So I will go much deeper into that in a little bit. And before I do that, I want to mention a couple of quick things here. I just want to thank our sponsor who is suiting me here. And this is from Sene Studio, and they make travel suits. And I reached out to the CEO, Ray, and see if we could do something together. So you guys, if you guys like my suit, go visit Sene Studio, which is SENE studio.com. If you guys use the code, the Futur, just like the way we spell it, you'll save 10% off. And what I really like about this suit is that it has this kind of athleisure feel to it. Like as you guys know, I travel a lot, and it's great for me to be able to put on a suit, jump on a plane, and go do my thing, and go back again. So thank you, you guys. Check out Sene Studio. We'll include the links in the description down below. Getting back to this now. How do you do this? How does this all happen? I'll probably flip back and forth to this. So I want to talk about, before we talk about the how, I want to talk about the why. Why is it important? Because I'm seeing a lot of reaction from people as to carousels. They don't want to do it. Okay, so I found 3 quotes that I thought were really important and relevant to the conversation we're going to have today. The first one is this. It's about an unexamined life is not worth living. That's from Plato. And that means that we have to kind of start to think about the things that we think about and start to reflect on the things that we know. We have to look at what it is that we think and question that. And then there's a quote here from Flannery O'Connor, and she wrote, "I write to discover what I know." And this quote shocked me. Like when I discovered this, I was thinking, don't you write what you already know? Isn't that how you do things? And so it's fascinating. This concept was taking an idea and inverting it in my brain. And it made me really step back and look at that. And then it led me to this other quote from David C. Baker, who wrote the book, The Business of Expertise. And he says, you gain clarity through articulation. You gain clarity through articulation. And so this, what these two ideas are saying that I don't know what I know until I express it in one form or the other. And writing, for a lot of people, is the fastest way to know what it is that you know. And this is why you see so many leaders, entrepreneurs, talk about why they do daily journaling, why it's important to put down your thoughts. And this is mostly to discover what it is that you know and don't know. And this is why I do what I do here with you guys, is because I'm able to hear a question, think about it, question my own beliefs, and then articulate that in some way to you. So how do we do that? How do we articulate our ideas, okay? How do we do that? Now, for some of you guys, the easiest thing to do is to write. So you write. You can write a tweet. You can write a medium-length post for Medium. You can write something long. You can write a novel. You can write a book. You can write a white paper. How else can you articulate the way that you think? What do you guys think? Art? Yes? You could say it. It's okay. I mean, you can grab the mic. I prefer to say in the mic, but I'll repeat it for you. What else?
You can do a video.
Is your mic on? Yes, you could do a video. Yep. Is that what you do?
Yes, that's what I do.
Is your mic on? I don't hear you. You have to push the button. There you go.
My mic is on.
Yeah. So you do video or no?
Yes, I do video.
Okay. How else can you articulate the way you think? Anybody? Podcast. Yeah, you can do a podcast. Yes. That's great. Photography, yeah. Especially if you're doing photojournalism, telling stories through pictures, right? And sometimes that could start a revolution. So that's very powerful. I just want us to try to write down as many ideas as we can about how to articulate, because I'm not trying to say that there is one way that's better. The best way is the way that works for you, the one that's easiest and most natural for you. Go ahead.
Discussion.
Discussion, yeah. So we're going to talk, right?
Yep.
Discussion. And a more formal version of this is probably to do a TED Talk, right? We could do that. And you can become a teacher via discussion. How else can you articulate what you think? So, what's that?
Audio.
Audio. Any form of audio, right. Oh, through music. And the lyrics that you write. And the melodies, okay? So pretty much all form of visual art, any way that you express yourself. And you could do this through interpretive dance, performance art. And that's how you can express yourself too. So you can do it via performance. Okay, so my favorite way of articulating my thinking is through video. But video takes a long time, as you know. You have to light it, you have to shoot, and you have to get the video and the audio in sync. You know what I'm talking about. And that's just the beginning of the work. Because then you have to edit it, and you have to color grade it, and then you have to put the titles, and then you have to spell check the titles, something we don't do so well here, apparently. And so that's a lot of work. So the way I start thinking about this is I want to find the fastest way to express the way I think. Okay? So articulation is to help us to think. And somebody might be watching this video and saying, well, why is that important? Why should I do this? Isn't everybody doing this? And we're going to get into it. So what are some of the reasons why you'd want to share what it is that you think with the world? Does anybody have any guesses or ideas here? Just shout it out, okay? There's another mic in the back, by the way.
I think one reason is to, inspire people around you. You never know what kind of value you can bring to people just by articulating your thoughts.
Yeah. So I'm going to write inspire and serve others. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Serve. I need to put that right. Okay. What else?
To validate, what you're talking about, to make sure you know it's true.
To get validation. And through validation, I think you start to establish authority. That's a pretty good reason.
To get feedback also.
Perfect. Get feedback. Man, you guys are sharp today. I like this. Get feedback. What else?
Help educate others. So
yeah.
To spread your knowledge.
Okay. Inspire, serve, educate. I like that. And then ultimately, something may start to happen. When you start to help so many people, they'll start to look at you a little differently. And I know this word is dangerous, but I'm going to use it because I live dangerously. The word is you start to develop this expert status, or at least expertise, right? Because they keep hearing and seeing you talk about something, they find it really helpful, and then they start to label you this way. It's not that you're running around saying, I'm the expert of X, Y, and Z, but I demonstrate expertise in this, and that's what people are doing. And then eventually, there's another term that makes a couple of people cringe a little bit, but I'm going to use it anyways, okay? It's just the way things are going today. That you start to become seen as a thought leader. It's such a strange concept, this word, a thought leader, to lead people in thinking. That's crazy, but I love it. Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, so naturally, we're going to be talking a lot about Instagram carousels, and then there's this backlash. I'm pretty sure you may or may not have felt some way like this when you were going on LinkedIn or on Instagram, and you're seeing carousels all over the place. It's nuts. And then you think, God, if I have to see another carousel, I need to unfollow people. You guys feel that way? I see you're smiling like, maybe, I don't know, okay. Well, whatever. It's like, was that?
I said, lead be my thought.
Okay. So it's like there's just so much carousels going on, and then people say, did I miss the boat, Chris? Should I be doing this? And I said, I don't know if you're missing the boat. And I generally agree with you. There are a lot of really bad carousels out there. And this is pretty natural, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more. This idea that the carousels are bad, right? But I just want to make a little analogy for you here. It's that there's a lot of bad art in the world, but we don't say don't use paint. And I don't know what the stats are, but it's astounding how many videos or how many minutes or hours of videos that get uploaded to YouTube on a daily basis. But we don't say don't make a YouTube video. So this is just another device or platform that you can use to communicate your ideas. So this is where I say, don't hate the device, just hate whoever's making it and their messaging, because they don't quite understand it. So I'm going to get into this, all right? And why do some carols suck, and why are some others good? And when I say some, I mean most. Like, most of them suck. So you guys, please stop making sucky carousels, and we're going to talk about that, okay? This is a public service announcement, all right? Okay. So this is what you're seeing. You're seeing the attack of the clones. This is a hashtag I think I'm going to start here, Slide-mageddon. It's the destruction of the internet because of so many slides everywhere. It's just too much, right? And I'll tell you why. It's because when we see something that works, we're like, that's exciting. That person's blowing up. Maybe I need to do the same thing. So what we do is we wind up copying it, okay? And I want to talk about this a little bit. So what happens is if you just copy the work, and we see this a lot, it's like, didn't I see that idea before already? And you see that version, and you see another version, and they just get progressively worse. If you copy something, make it better, don't make it worse. Here's what I see. They use bad typesetting, they use too many colors, they use really bad stock photography, and then they just screw it up. And why would they do that? It's because we want to do a little bit of work and get great results. And then they hit me on the DMs and they ask, why isn't it working? It seems pretty obvious. So Austin Kleon wrote this book. You guys know who Austin Kleon is, right? I hope I'm going to spell his name correctly. He was a guest on our show after all. He wrote this book. It's called Steal Like an Artist. I talked to him about that, and he says, most people just steal. They forget the artist part. Okay? And so they just steal. So this is the bad stealing, is when you steal from one source. That's bad stealing. When you steal from many sources, that's good stealing. So you're able to mix and combine. The other kind of bad stealing that I want to talk about is when everybody steals from the same source. And it feels like replication. This is why the attack of the clones. And you see somebody post one quote from somebody, and then everybody posts the same quote. And you're not getting any results. So we wanted to start to expand outside of the Instagram bubble. So this little dash line we'll just label as the Instagram bubble, okay? Just let go. What we want to do is we want to look outside of Instagram to draw inspiration from. We can look at literature, we can look at books, maybe film, photography. Just go outside. That's all. And instead of regurgitating the same kind of content, because what happens is it looks very derivative. Like it's derivative. I hope I spelled that right. Right? It's just like bad copies on top of bad copies. Maybe you look into fashion or architecture. Did I write videos? Maybe you watch some videos and you start to bring those things in, so you're stealing from a lot of different sources. Or maybe there's a idea that you really like about copying. Maybe you should just look into like how many people have said something about copying and synthesize that information to form your own point of view. So yeah, I see a lot of these slides happen, and all they're doing is reprocessing other people's ideas and hoping to get a shortcut in life. And we know how that works out. It usually doesn't work out well. Now, in some cases, people do get away with this, but for the most part, they do get called out on this. Like, oh, you just stole that. And then they cite it, and it's like, oh, I was inspired by it, so I want to talk about that. Okay, so here's what this looks like, right? You see a piece of art, and your instinct, and it's sometimes okay to just copy it to learn. Not okay to copy it to share without citing any references, citing your sources, and we see this happen a lot. And I think this is really fear-based, right? Why would somebody steal somebody else's carousel, change out a couple of images, and in the essence, the pacing, the phrasing, it's exactly the same. I think it's because they're not very confident. They're insecure. That if people see that, they're going to judge them poorly. So they do the exact thing that you're not supposed to do, which is they delete all credit. They don't cite sources. And then they just change it for change's sake. That's all they're doing, right? They're just making slight modifications. And this is what's happening. Modifications. Hard to talk and think and write at the same time. Okay, so here's my diagram. And in this direction, we're copying. We're moving in that direction, okay? And this is valuable. This is new. It's impactful when it starts. And then you see them just copying across. So it started as good. Maybe you're the first person to copy it. Maybe people don't know, and they're like, that's still pretty good. So it's great, and then it goes to good, and then it gets less and less and just becomes, at this point, to me, I'm sorry to say this, it's just garbage at this point. Right? Because I just drew one thing here, but there's one here, and it's just a bunch of the same old thing. Now, I'm taking a lot of time to explain something here because the solution is going to make a lot more sense once we understand what you're not supposed to do. So definitely don't do this. Now, I want to let you guys know, let me make sure of this, I'm not going to talk about it here, that it's okay to be inspired by something. It's okay to be a fan of. It's okay to admire their work. And if you're inspired by something, just repost it. Don't change it. Cite sources and then mention them. Don't hide that fact. Okay? Now you're saying, I love this, I want more of the world to see it. I'm not going to pretend, this is the pretension part, like I'm going to pretend that I made this. Not good. Okay? And so here's another analogy I want to make for you guys, which is this, is that if you took a great piece of art or anything and you put it on a really crappy photocopier and you make a copy, over time it degenerates. And then you lose, what you do is you lose the fidelity of the original image, the sharpness, the contrast, the details, and you lose the integrity of the image. And in the same way, as my public service announcement goes here, is if you keep doing this, not only does the image lose fidelity and integrity, but you lose integrity. Okay, so let's try and figure out a different way of doing this. Now, when we see something, what we shouldn't do is we should not copy the results. Don't copy the results. What you should do is copy the process, the thinking, and probably the framework. Okay? So Austin Kleon refers to this as the genealogy of ideas. So he says that we all have a family tree. that somewhere in your distant past is somebody that meets somebody that meets somebody, and eventually you are one of those 4 children. So if you see something here, like a cool idea, has anybody seen anything cool and inspiring recently? Anything you have? Like, do you remember what that might be? So I can write it in here. I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you don't have anything, don't worry.
Yeah. Come back to me.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to see like a cool idea, right? So the old way of copying is I'm going to take that idea and just do something like it. I'm going to copy that idea. Okay? What you want to do is you want to go up the tree. You want to sit there and think, what was that person thinking about? What were they looking at? So what were they thinking about? What were they reading? What were they watching? What do you think their intention is in making this? Do they have a motive? What was their creative process like? What tools did they use? And then understand that and go backwards. So if you hear me talking about copying, like, okay, stealing, let's talk about the word stealing or originality, okay? And then I go, okay, well, where did I read that from? Well, I would say Austin Kleon. He talks about this a lot. Not only him. There's another person, unfortunately I screwed this up, but Kirby Ferguson. Do you know who Kirby Ferguson is? Anybody? No? He put out this video called Everything is a Remix. You might know that now. And he has the whole Everything is a Remix project, right? And it's no coincidence, too, that these 2 ideas came up around the same time. Stealing like an artist, or steal like an artist, and everything is a remix. Okay? So then he goes back in time, and then you just keep doing this until you go back to the source. You do it just enough times. So what's really cool is you're not seeing somebody's interpretation of a painting. You're actually going back to the painting and then to the photograph and the models in which the original artist was looking at before they painted it. And that's what I'm talking about. So the genealogy of ideas is an idea from Austin Kleon, is to go backwards, to get back to the source, and if we can do that. And so that, I think, is really cool. And it reminds me of this quote from Jim Rohn, who I quote quite often, which is, success leaves clues. All you have to do is pick them up. It's like literally like right there, or figuratively, I should say. It's figuratively right in front of your face. All you have to do is pick them up. Okay. Now, do you guys know who Jim Rohn is? Some of you do, especially if you watch the channel, you may know who he is right now. But he is like the godfather of business philosophy. And if you follow people like Gary Vaynerchuk, switch colors here, and people like Tony Robbins, and Brian Tracy, and Darren Hardy, who are well-established authors and thought leaders and entrepreneurs, and Gary Vee. They all, in some way, say something very similar to Jim Rohn. So to me, when you're inspired by these people, try to figure out, because if you read their biography, they usually do credit who they learned their ideas from, and it usually points back to Jim Rohn. And if you look at what they say, it's all very similar, but it's said in a different way. So this is also another clue as to how you can say the same thing, but have your own voice injected in there. And I think that's really cool. So I read Jim Rohn's book. It's called the 7 Principles or 7 Strategies for Wealth and Happiness. Have you guys read this book? It's an excellent book. I highly, highly recommend it, okay? And I'm reading this, and Jim Rohn learned from his mentor, who never wrote a book. So he had a mentor, okay? So his mentor was a guy named Earl something, I think, but I don't remember his name.
Earl Nightingale?
No. Good guess. That doesn't sound right. I mean, you could be right, but I don't think that's the name. And then Jim also says, well, the original source of all this stuff was the Old Testament. So he's going back to the Bible here. You see how this works? So if you wanted to try to be more original and to create more impactful content, keep tracing things back to its source and then discover it for yourself and then wrap it around your voice and your story. And this is how you do this, okay? Any questions so far? Yeah, go ahead. There's 2 mics. Melinda, can you help us out? There's another mic right there. Thank you, Melinda.
Just a mic here.
Just turn on your keypad.
So what are you describing to me? I can't stop thinking about trends. Right? How like, you know, how social media trends and how people jump into repeating.
Yes.
You know, so could you explore a little bit more about like the relationship of this with the trends? Because what you're saying is that do not copy, but at the same time, nobody wants to reinvent wheel. So you kind of, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think I can't stop thinking. I'm trying to think just how to articulate my question, but yeah, that's what I was thinking.
What is your name?
Giovanni.
Giovanni, hold your thought. As I turn these pages, see if I don't just unravel it all for you.
Okay.
And if not, try to articulate your thinking into a question that I can answer. Because we can talk about trends, but I'm fearful that I'm going to take you down a path that you're not going to go down, maybe. But I will tell you right now that, you know, maybe there aren't so many new ideas. Maybe. I'm not sure. Okay, but we'll talk about it, all right? So I want to talk about this thing, and you see all these teachers, these so-called experts, these influencers that exist on the internet, and they talk about this. And they always say, what's the number 1 rule? The number 1 rule. You guys know what the number 1 rule is? It's right here in front of you. They say, make high-value content. That's what they say. Make high-value content. And I sit there and I read those things. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to make low-value content. That's why it wasn't working. Like, am I an idiot? Like, this is a platitude. You guys know what a platitude is? Something that we all know, like freedom is great. You know? And it's like, yeah, we all need oxygen too. But to say, make high-value content, because what's the opposite of that? Make low-value content? Nobody wants to make low-value content, so I think they say this because they don't even know what to do. So I'm going to try and help you a little bit here. I'm going to dig in deeper into this thing. Like, what does it mean to make high-value content? Like, we agree, but now you have to explain it. Okay. The first thing that we all want to do is we want to make something new. We want to make something fresh. And the word that usually people throw around is like, I want to be an original person. I want to make something original. But how many new things do you know that exist out there? That's a very difficult thing. And it's like we all love an idea that we've seen before. So I personally believe, this is just my own belief here, there are very few new things. And the longer that we live, the less likely it is that you're going to be the person to bring something new to the world. So we become obsessed with creating something original. Now, original might mean original to you, but it's not original to me. Now, let me explain that. Meaning, you don't know where you got the idea from. That's just called ignorance. So when you show the work, and you're like, this is really original, and if somebody has enough of an art history background that they can sit there and say, well, no, this is really what Gauguin was doing back in this, in this painting, and your idea isn't really that new, right? Like if you look at Shepard Fairey's work, you might say, wow, that's really new and fresh, and it actually is not. The Russian constructivists have been doing this, and actually if you look at the work, it's almost the same. And then you say, well, that's a really new idea, this obey giant thing, obey, you know? And then you look at that film, which he referenced in the 80s, and it's like literally the exact same typeset. So why does he get credit for doing something new? Now, his work is worth a lot, and I think the work is actually quite good. Why is that? Well, because he pulled from an 80s movie, obscure, one of these grindhouse films, these B films, you know, that nobody watched. So he's bringing something that's new to you. That's all he's doing. And then he grabs Russian constructivism, the works of like Alexander Rodchenko and these other constructivists, also kind of obscure. He puts those two things together, and he draws President Obama and puts the word hope on there as part of that campaign, and then his career skyrockets. So when we're talking about doing new things, we're really not talking about anything new at all. What we're talking about are old things made new. That's it. Take something old and make it new. Case in point, the love story of star-crossed lovers, you might recall Romeo and Juliet. But what we keep seeing is the exact same story being remade, retold, contemporary times. So in the past, in the time of the Capulets and the Montagues, they argued, they fought because there was a family feud. The families hated each other. That doesn't really happen anymore in modern society, right? So if you look at the film, is it You Got Mail? I think it's You Got Mail. Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan. They're in love with each other. But Tom Hanks, his family owns like the Barnes & Noble or the Amazon books of the day, right? Whereas she owns the little bookstore around the corner. And they have diametrically opposing points of view. So their families are at war, but just through the story or the lens of bookstores. And they just keep doing this over and over again, right? So what we're looking for is just a new way to tell an old story. And how do we do that? Where are my notes? Melinda, what am I missing here?
What about the movies?
Well, we just talked about the movies. And you'll see like films that kind of are groundbreaking, and there are once in a while these films that are very groundbreaking, and then you'll see other films looking just like it. We've seen this happen over and over again. So I did ask Melinda to look into the percentages of films, what percentage of films are based on a remake, a sequel, and based on a book. So of all the films that are produced in 2019, how many do you think were based on a remake, a sequel, or based on a book versus original? What do you guys think? What percentage would you put that at?
90%.
Hey man, you're really good. It is around 90%. Dang, somebody's working in film and video here apparently. Yes, it's about 90% are based on things we've already seen before. So it's very challenging for filmmakers to get their projects greenlit because nobody wants to take that risk. And then you see like an original film and it just bombs at the box office. And even remakes or adaptations of a play or a musical into a screen, the silver screen, also bomb at the box office, but it's less of a gamble. Cats in particular, probably like maybe one of the worst box office flops ever. So that does happen, right? So what we need to do is to take something old and we make it new. I'm going to show you or share with you some strategies on how to do that, okay? So another Jim Rohn quote, he says that wealth is your ability to convert experience. What's the quote, Melinda? Into equity and capital. I think there's another word besides experience, right? Knowledge. To convert experience and knowledge. So before I was talking about people referencing Jim Rohn, and why is it that Tony Robbins is super successful? Why is it that Gary Vaynerchuk has a couple hundred, like I don't know how much his company's worth, but several $100 million when they're all using the same source material? So they do something, it's called filtering. So the key here is to convert, is to change, to transform. What you want to do is you want to transform something into something else. And the more you're able to do that, the better the idea seems to be. So let's get into that. So I have this metaphor. Apparently I'm not the only one who refers to it as this, is we're going to talk about creativity. So what you want to do is we all aspire to be very creative, to be fresh, new, and different, and hopefully groundbreaking. And so if you look at a rubber band, there's 3 states of the rubber band, okay? Where it's normal, we're going to call it like this. I'll draw it. It looks like that. It's not stretched very far. And one where it's stretched really far. So it might look something like this. Where you have the rubber band, and it's going to break really soon, but it doesn't break just yet. Okay? That's a really far stretch. And then what happens when you stretch it too far? It just snaps. And hopefully you don't lose an eye. Okay, so this is no stretch. What we're talking about here is to be able to take something that's familiar and make it new, make it unfamiliar. And I'm going to share some ideas on how to do that. But so if we don't do anything to the idea, basically we've not transformed it at all. We've barely touched it. And so this tends to be really boring or derivative, like a copy. And if we pull it so far apart and so wild, it becomes broken and too abstract and hard to understand. And we see works of art like that. Usually experimental videos are like that. When you walk into a gallery and just like weird colors, and I'm like, what does this mean? I don't get it. So the magic is somewhere in between. The farther you can stretch it, an idea, the more you can transform it while still not breaking it. That's the magic. So I'm going to talk about how to do that, okay? So one idea is called the big small. And the big small is this. This is how you get people to see something they've always seen in a new way. That's what I mean, the new old, or the old new, okay? The big small is something like this. Take something small and make it really big. Or take something big and make it really small. And it forces us to kind of re-examine something that we've looked at for a really long time. Andy Warhol did a great job about this, right? He would take common household objects and just present it us in a new way. So he would take the Brillo box, the packaging for Brillo, and just print it out and make them really big. Or he would take the Campbell's soup can, which is quite famous, and just paint them so that we would have to examine this differently. Another way that you can do this is to take, say, you guys know, I'm going to draw something here. Hopefully you guys know what this is. You guys know what that is? The escape key. We see it on the keyboard. Now with all the scissor mechanisms, the keys don't look like this anymore, but the classic keyboards that have such a great ergonomic feel to them with great feedback, it's like that. And yeah, we see that on the keyboard. We don't pay attention to it at all, but if you make this really big and you turn it into something like this, where somebody can actually sit on it, all of a sudden it's an art object. And then these sell for, I don't know, $100, $200. So you've taken a ubiquitous item as a key and you turned it into a seat. Conversely, you could take something like a chapel of some sort, right? You guys have seen these things. And then what do they do? They carve that on the end of a toothpick, or not a toothpick, a match, or on a grain of rice. So nothing new except for it's been transformed in scale. So changing the scale is one way to make something new. So if you're thinking about how to write a post for Instagram or how to present a new or a concept that's everybody has taken for granted, just try and do that. And then there's something else called the remix, where you just take something and you combine it with something unexpected. Does anybody have an example of that? There's lots and lots of things like that. Anybody? We were doing so good earlier today, and now I told you your brain might hurt, and we're getting into brain hurt territory right now. Yeah? Well, I'll tell you, one famous remix, quite literally, is I think Jay-Z had the Black Album, and the Beatles had the White Album, right? So this is the White Album, this is the Black Album, and I think Danger Mouse, you know Danger Mouse? He took those and mashed them together and made the Gray Album, quite literally taking two things and mixing them together. Here in Los Angeles, we're kind of well known for our fascination with street food and food trucks, right? So a while ago, there was a food truck that was always like with a long line. Like every time you rolled up to it, there was a long line. They would tweet their location, and then you'd have to hunt them down. And I think it's called the Kogi truck. And they took Korean short rib, and they mixed it with tacos. So you got Korean tacos, mixing two cultures, Korean with Mexican culture and smashing it together. And that became something quite interesting and new. And now there's a bunch of permutations of that kind of idea. Like fusion foods, we see that a lot, right? Fusion foods. And there's something called molecular gastronomy. You guys know about this? Molecular gastronomy? Melinda didn't even know this term, but maybe you guys will also know something. Molecular gastronomy is a very specific kind of cooking that's mostly science and chemistry with some food, like cooking stuff. So what they do is they take foods that you're familiar with and they deconstruct it. They might take something that's solid and blend it and reform it into a cube so that when you bite into it, it's not what you expect it to be. So you're going to taste that watermelon for the first time again. And they mix things together like that. And they create really wonderful flavors. So fusing things together, that is the idea of the remix. One really great remix, I think, in terms of this concept, is this poster I saw. It was for Helvetica. But it was set in like Kazlan. And people are like, what? So everybody's familiar with Helvetica, the typeface, but then this was done in a serif typeface. And it messed people up. So you take Helvetica, because we all know this word and how it's supposed to look, and they just change the typeface. And then everybody's like, brilliant, genius, what a great idea. You guys understand?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Could you give us some examples for those two strategies, big, small, and remix, that have to do with like ideas?
Yes.
'Cause I see how this works with tangible things, you know, like works of art, things that you can see visually, or like music, like examples that you've given here. But I'm wondering how this works with ideas. Like, what would it mean to take a big idea and make it small, or?
Like a image?
Well, because I'm thinking, I'm like, for me personally, when I communicate ideas. And so I'm wondering, could you apply those to like abstract concepts?
Like what?
Well, I'm thinking of an example from the future, for example. If you talk about a concept like, like value-based pricing, or something that has to do with something like that, could you apply those strategies to like those kinds of ideas?
Yes, most definitely.
And how would that work?
Okay. Is $10,000 a lot of money for you?
For me, yes.
Yeah, so if I were to try to sell your course for $10,000, would you say that's a big number?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm going to tell you, normally I charge clients $100,000 for that. Is $10,000 a big number?
No.
Well, that's what I mean. Or if I tell you that people who have taken this course, this is totally fictitious, this is not something, people who have taken that course now have made $40,000. Would you consider this number big?
No.
So I just applied the big small principle for you
Okay.
on an abstract idea. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, no, I was thinking about it in the context of, making a post for Instagram, or in the context of a carousel. I'm wondering how this works. I'm like, okay, I have an idea of what I want to make a post about. And then the challenge is to remix it with one of these strategies. So I'm having trouble seeing how that works concretely.
Okay. Because our audience is very broad, from photographers, architects, videographers, fashion people, graphic designers, I have to give you the broadest kind of conceptual frameworks, and then hopefully you start to connect the dots yourself.
Got it.
Because I could sit here and try to figure it out with you specifically what you're doing, but I'll show you how these things work, okay? I saw an ad, and it looked something like this. And it had a little plate, right? And it's one of those frozen dinners, so it has little compartments for peas, a little piece of meat, a dessert thing. And then there was somebody's hand, and let me look at how this might look. And the fork was like this big, right? So this is somebody with a napkin or a placemat and looking at their food. And this was something about like, we don't make small size meals. Like we make meals for full grown adults. So they just took something and just made it really, really small. And then this was an ad. Okay. So if you're looking for ideas, I have a folder with thousands of images like this that I just collect because I used to teach like advertising concepts to my students, right? So I would recommend that you look at Archive Magazine There may be a K in there. I don't know if they spell it like that. Archive magazine. And all they do is showcase the best conceptual ads from all over the world. Are you looking for more ideas like this on how to remix and combine?
Oh yeah, I was just looking for a couple examples, but I totally understand what you mean by, I'll come with them myself. I was just curious.
Okay. So these are different ways or different frameworks for you to start to think about this now, because we do aspire to create things that feel new and feel fresh. And so what we have to do is just find things that we like and try to find that place where they overlap. I saw a really brilliant ad. You guys know what Preparation H is? I mean, we're getting older, so we should know, I guess. I think Preparation H is for, what is that called? Hemorrhoids, thank you. That's why, hemorrhoids, right? Something like that. I don't know how to spell it. And they drew this thing with I'm not going to do a great job drawing this, but this is a bicycle, right? Cropped really tight. And this is where the seat goes, right? Have you seen this ad before? And the seat looks like this. It's a saw blade. And just looking at it made me hurt. Like, I understand this idea. So they took the saw blade, which we all understand, cuts, and then they just replaced the seat and put it in there. Brilliant ad. So they found the overlap between two things and put them together. I'll show you another ad, okay? We're going down a different hole here, but we're going to do it anyways. Who cares, right? I saw this ad, and it was something like this. Let me see if I can draw this the right way. Oh, I messed up, guys. Something like this. Okay? I totally messed up that drawing. But from the way that this thing was lit, it looked like a shark. Let me do this again. Kind of on the spot drawing here. So it was the front of the car, and then it looked like that. And then it's like this. Yeah? That looks like a shark now, right? And it was for the BMW Z3. It was the convertible. And it says cuts through the road like a shark or whatever, something like that. And this thing won a gazillion awards. So all they did was take the profile of a BMW and light it in a certain way so that it was this illusion that it was a shark. Because it had these side vents, the gills, right? So again, on a different day when we want to talk about conceptual visual thinking, I can go really deep on this and give you a gazillion examples, okay? All right. So we mentioned this before about looking elsewhere to draw inspiration from things that aren't directly in front of you. Because if everybody they're all feeding from the same creative watering hole, so everybody's going there and they're just grazing here, right? So everything's going to be the same, and what happens is the water becomes really putrid. What you want to go is go somewhere else, go far, far away. And the farther away you go from where everybody's looking, the more original your ideas seem. And I forget if it's Picasso who said this, but the secret to originality is your ability to hide your source. I need to interpret that for you, because if I say that, people are like, well, Chris just said, cite your sources. What they're saying is your ability to hide your source in that people can't figure out where you got it from. It's not that everybody knows where you got it from and you just cut out the credit. Totally different concepts, okay? So go out. A lot of really well-respected designers, when you ask them, when you get stuck, what do? Most of them say one of two things. I go for a walk so I can clear my mind. Because in the act of being bored and walking, your autobiographical brain starts to take over and starts to pull out really rich ideas. But the other one that's a little bit more useful for you is they say this: I go to the museum. The high art that's there really breaks my thinking as to what is possible. They're not going to go and see a piece of art in the gallery and say, I'm going to produce the same thing as Andy Warhol. But what they'll do is they'll go there and they'll see that piece of modern art and they'll say, oh, I just have to challenge people's assumption about what they know. I'm going to make something small big. And they go back and they make something small big. And then people won't say, well, that was Warhol, wasn't it? Because he doesn't own that idea either. Okay? But if you copy the silk screening technique of Warhol with the offset colors, then they're like, that looks like a Warhol, doesn't it? And that's where you kind of get into some slippery slope territory there. The other thing that you can do, which I highly encourage you to do, is when you see a piece of content, an idea, I want you to think about how this relates to you. Make it personal to you. When Jim Rohn was talking about referencing the Old Testament, he would say, like, the best stories, the best business lessons have already been taught in Scripture. But what he does is he takes the Scripture and he changes it and makes it contemporary and relates it to something that's happened to him in his life. So in that way, you own the story that nobody can take from you. And if you can do that, you'll do really well for yourself. And one thing that you can do is you can look up on the internet writing prompts for creativity or whatever, writing prompts, right? And the writing prompts are nothing more than little thought bombs thrown in your face so that you can think about what it is that you want to write about. So one of them I wrote is, I mean, they're not mine, I just collect these things, is what's a big failure you've had? And if you search into your mind, you'll come up with the first one, and the second one, and the third one, and fourth one, and just start writing. And that's one thing. Or what's a turning point in your life and your career? Those are inflection points, and something happened. So there was the life before and the way that life is now. Something led up to that point. Something made you make a decision, and you made a decision, and now you're on a different branch. So what happened there? You can talk about that. You can talk about a hero or a shiro in your life, somebody you've looked up to, a parent, a friend, a teacher, a coach, an imaginary coach, one that you study from a distance. They don't have to be real people that you know. And think about what you've learned from them and write that through your lens, your POV, and make it something you own. Now, as I look across this room, there's a good diversity here in terms of like ethnicities and where you're all from, right? So I think if I gave everybody here the same story, something super inspirational, a quote, if you make it yours and you fold your story into it, this is where I think you're going to find some Instagram gold for people. They want to connect with human beings. Like, unless you're an account that's already got millions of followers, posting quotes from other people, not interesting at all. But if you take that quote and you're trying to find a story where this applies to your life or your version of this, and you say it a different way, this is how you make something old new again. And there's a woman, I think she's a woman or a team of people, I think it's called, her account's called Sarcasm Only. And it's meant for women, but I love reading them because they're so funny. They're really funny. And I think this started a couple of years ago, and she puts out like 10 a day. It's incredible. And it's from a very specific, like, cranky woman's voice who is still young. It's very specific. So it owns a very specific lane that, well, I'm not that person. I can't own that. So that's really cool from Sarcasm Only. Okay? The last thing is, I just want to make you guys think about this a little bit, is how to make it sticky. That's almost as worthless as saying make high-value content. Make high-value content. But sticky, I was watching a documentary on Netflix. There's 3 things that really help us with memory, like why we remember certain things and we forget most everything else. And the 3 things they said, I think in this order, is emotion. Like you have to create a certain emotion that's visual. So there's images, so it's visual. And lastly, stories help us to remember. So if you can hit all 3, it's an emotional story that's visual. You got a banger right there. So think about that. That's what people remember. So what does this mean to you? How do you apply any of this? So I think a lot of us are scared to say something that might offend somebody, right? So we play it really safe. And if you play it really safe, that's fine. You won't have any enemies, but you also won't have a lot of friends. The way I look at it is if you say something and it doesn't irritate like 5 people, you're not saying anything at all. Because you have to be for something for someone to be against you, right? So this is where you have to be somewhat polarizing. Some would say I'm very polarizing. So I say in that spectrum of where you can push things, find out what works for you. But you got to take a position. You got to stand for something. Okay, I'm going to flip back here, give you guys a second to think here. Jonah, are we having any questions I need to talk about? Okay. Here's an exercise that you can do in terms of high-value content. There's an exercise in the business of expertise that David Baker writes about. He says in the military, there's this exercise called drop and give me 20, right? Drop and give me 20. You guys have heard of this? If you ever watch any kind of military boot camp kind of film, it's like, maggot, drop and give me 20. It means you have to give 20 push-ups right on the spot. And the idea behind drop and give me 20 is very simple, is that you should be at a level of fitness that you can, at any given notice, drop and do 20 push-ups. That's the idea. So you're always ready for battle or whatever. You're physically fit. So he said that to become an expert, you need to think about, like, what is your 20? Drop and give me 20 insights that you have from doing what it is that you've done. 20 insights. And can you write them down? So you guys that are watching, and those of you guys here in attendance, think about that. What 20 things do you know from your life experience about art, design, about clients, relationships, philosophy, health, fitness, anything? Sit down and write what those 20 things are and try to fill up the page. The next thing is, ask yourself, would anybody pay you for any one of those things? Would they pay you for this? What dollar amount would they put on that, right? What would they pay you? So I produce videos like this for free, which costs us a lot of money to actually make. And why do we do this? Because some people actually really enjoy our videos and actually donate money to us so that we can continue to do this, so that the video is valuable. Like, you guys are giving me something very valuable right now. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? You're giving me your time, and you're giving me your attention. So in LA, to drive across town on a Friday at 4 o'clock, that's a big commitment. And if I didn't give you anything valuable, you'd be quite angry at the end of this. So think about what insights that you have. This is the other problem. When people create content online and I read them, I swipe through them, I'm like, you didn't teach me anything new. You didn't tell me something I already knew in a new way. You didn't shift my perspective 1 degree, and I'm upset because you wasted my time. The opposite is also kind of dangerous, where you put too much information on each slide that it becomes so dense that it doesn't become fun anymore for me to swipe through your carousel. So there is that kind of right amount, and it's not a formula I can tell you, but you know it when you see it. When you see somebody's carousel and it's flowing really nice, and it's building up a story, it's creating tension for you, and it gives you a satisfying conclusion to a story or a problem, then you feel that's great. So think about this. I have a coaching group. I tell them, you guys are all experts. Tell me what your 20 insights are. And they write, and then I ask them, what would you pay? What would a stranger pay to know this information? This is the key. This whole ability about wealth, converting your knowledge and experience. What is somebody going to pay you to hear, to show up, to drive across town and give you their time and attention? That's very valuable. Okay? Questions so far? Wow. Okay, please.
This is kind of all your talks always takes me to different places. So this one is taking me to music conception, right? When you're like creating the songs, you know, there are like thousands of songs with the same structure, the same chords, the same notes, and the same, and yet they do sound different. So I think I was thinking on to make it different. It could be something like unexpected, right? You gotta be. I think that's a factor that I can, from all of those big, small remix and all that kind of, being unexpected makes a big impression to determine if we've seen it or not, right? So yeah, that's
okay. So more of a statement.
It was more a comment of where my mind went to when I was thinking about this.
Like in pop music, there's only so many chords that people keep playing over and over, right? But they find slightly different arrangement, and maybe stylistically they play it differently, but it's kind of the same. In bass, is it like there's only 3 notes you can play, but there's infinite variations of that, I think, or something like that? I'm not a musician. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this because the internet's very smart and they don't like it when I say something I don't know. So I'm going to walk away from that one, okay? All right. So we're kind of, I'm 4 pages away here from reaching the end here. Okay. So now let's get into the nitty and the gritty. How are we going to do this, okay? Now, I'm going to share with you very specifically how I was able to make this post in 20 minutes. I'm constantly looking for ways to optimize my process and my workflow to get the most amount done and create the greatest amount of impact because I just have so little time to do this stuff. So I want you guys to get into this mindset to beta test before you launch. Beta test everything. What happens is I'm going to make an assumption, a broad assumption here, and sometimes you make an assumption, you get it wrong, is a lot of people just post it on Instagram and hope it works out. And if you're new to this game of creating carousels and trying to teach, it could take you a day. It used to take me almost a full day to make one carousel post. And then some would work and some wouldn't. And when they don't work, I get a little sad. And some work and I'm like, what happened? I can't figure it out. So I have a formula for you that will help to ease some of the pain, to speed up the creative process, and allow you to try a lot of different ideas to be able to iterate at the speed of thought, okay? And this is how it goes. There's a graph here, and the graph looks like this, and I want to be able to start with the easiest thing that I can do while doing the least amount of work. This is me. I'm really lazy. I want big impact for almost no work, and my mind is hardwired to think like that, okay? And then what I do is I translate that into something and I try it out via sketch form before I commit to actually making anything or searching for any images. And the way I do this is I test ideas. Now, where might be a good place to test ideas that is so easy for you? What do you guys think?
Well, for example, you can do it on Instagram, you can do it on your stories. We're just talk into it and see if you get any feedback for that.
That's
that just
good.
takes 10
okay,
seconds.
You can do IG stories. Great. Good job. What else? Like
Twitter, like
no
you said,
production, right? You can't do anything. You can't edit it. You just got to record and go. Great. What else?
You said Twitter earlier.
Yes, Twitter. Anywhere else? Quora. You answer questions on Quora? Is there 2 R's in Quora or 1? One R. Okay. Where else? Conversation.
Yeah, just tell someone.
Yeah, just sit down and let's talk, right? Friends, use that friend network and say, hey, I've been thinking about this. I want to tell you this story. Everybody's got to eat, so you meet them up for lunch, you tell them a story, and if they lean in, they're like, tell me more. They just can't get enough of this. You're like, okay, something there is working. And if you're not getting the reaction you want, either change the story or just forget about it. Where else can you make ideas really fast? Yeah, you want to be able to make ideas really fast so you can test things.
It's similar to stories, but I do live streams personally to just get it
Live
out
streams,
and,
yep.
and do like long stream of consciousness type things.
Yeah. Kind of like my original example about believe it till you achieve it. It was a long conversation. Whatever somebody said was valuable, I tested that and I put it back out into the universe, okay? So my process looks something like this. What I like to use is Twitter. Twitter, you get really fast feedback. And if you say it wrong, oh my God, angry design Twitter will be all over you, right? So you're going to know. And I'm constantly trying to find that spot that makes people care. So they either are really angry at me or they love it. So when I put something out and nobody really responds, it's like I didn't say it in a way that people care enough about it. The cool thing about Twitter is this feed. In 20 minutes, I'll put out the same tweet again, and I'll change the language. And it's weird. Same idea, said differently, totally different reaction. And what's really cool about Twitter is sometimes people say, Chris, you might want to look into this, or here's a different way of saying it, and I like their way of saying it better, and I start to mash it up. Okay, and I allow the Twitter thing to be a creative backboard for my ideas. So I don't know what sport this might be, but there's the backboard. It bounces, and that's Twitter. And Twitter's not a machine. I'm talking about all the people. And then the ball bounces back. And it's like, oh, that's what people care about. And how do you know they care about it? How can you tell? It's not just a feeling. Engagement. 100% engagement. And you can look at it as likes, retweets, which are, I think, the most powerful version of that, and comments. So do they respond to it? Likes, retweets, and comments. They're usually related. If you have something with lots of likes and very low retweets, I don't know what, I've not seen that too often. So usually it's some percentage of this drops and then it drops, right? It's something like that. So we can all find our threshold to say, as a rule moving forward, if a tweet gets more than, say, what would your number be? Like more than X number of likes, then it might be something you should pay attention to. What might that be for you? It's different for each person. It depends on how big your following is.
For me, if on Twitter, I don't have a strong following.
Yeah,
so
that's
if
fine.
it got like 20 likes, I would.
Okay, so
it's
let's say 40 likes. Okay, we're gonna set a new benchmark. So the reason why I want to say that is like I need 40 people at least to care about it. So I want you to raise your bar. So if you don't have a lot of followers and mentions and comments and all that stuff on Twitter, it means try tweaking the voice. Try one of these formulas. Say something that's gonna elicit an emotional response from somebody. Tell them a story that's very personal. Maybe, like I said, a turning point in your life, and see what happens. Like I said, I think people really want to connect to other human beings. So when you just put out what everybody else is putting out, it's like, no, you're just copy paste. Command-C, Command-V, that's all you're doing. Tweak it, change it, okay? Sometimes, I'm not saying I do it on purpose all the time. Sometimes I do just misspell words to piss people off. And then they get angry. Then they respond. They're like, you spelt it wrong, you spelt it wrong. It just keeps putting it up in the feed. I'm like, I know. Not always. Sometimes I do really just screw up, okay? You gonna say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say one thing that I've tried for myself that has worked, because I have like a really small following on Twitter,
Yeah.
is competing on comment sections on Instagram
Yes.
of people who are related to my niche, like big accounts,
Yep.
and trying to get there early and trying to get top comments. And if I do get a lot of upvotes and replies on that comments, I know that something struck a chord.
Yeah.
And that's something that anyone can do with
Yes.
no following.
100%, yes. And I'm going to show you other ways of doing this for people who don't have a big Twitter following. Not like I have a big Twitter following, but it's enough for me to test ideas. So now you find something that hits a nerve. Now what I do is I go to my notebook, right? I keep this little notebook in my pocket or next to my bedside. And what I do, there's the notebook right there, is I just jot down ideas. I draw a grid of 8 frames and I just start writing. And what's really cool about it is that this notebook is not very big, as you can see, and this is it. That means you cannot cram too much information in each one of these squares. It forces you to figure out what the heck you want to say and to say in a powerful, succinct way. What happened is I ran out of pages on this one, and I didn't buy a new one yet, so I whipped out this one, and now, unfortunately, this one's much bigger. So what happens is I start writing more. I'm messing up my own formula here, you guys, so I would suggest that you keep a much smaller notebook and just jot in 8 story beat ideas. Draw a grid. I draw a line, I cut it into 4 parts, done. Just write like, what am I thinking? And then I look at my own idea, and sometimes this happens, and actually when I say sometimes, almost every time, I look at it, I was really excited when I started, but when I looked at it later on, I'm like, no, that's terrible. But you know what? My commitment in time was 2 minutes here. That's all. I mean, you could see this. It's not like these are not works of art here. 2 minutes, get an idea out. Doesn't work, move on. So my life is full of books like this, of ideas that are stillborn. They didn't make it out, all right? So here's what we do. We move from the path of easiest to hardest. So this is a little bit harder. So to me, taking a tweet, the idea worked. Now I have to figure out how to make it into 8 frames, 9 or 10 frames, and then I put it out on Instagram. And if it works, it's awesome. But I don't stop there. Now we're going to step outside of the Instagram bubble for 1 second. I'm going to talk about what's hard. Well, I'm going to make a video of this now. And you know what? These whiteboards were literally Instagram carousels that worked, that I was working on, and Matthew sends me a message. He's like, Chris, work on that one. Put that video out. And that video now has over 100,000 views. So I just test an idea, and when it works, just like Hollywood, I do the remake, I do the sequel, I do the Broadway musical adaptation of it, and I just keep doing that. And if it still works, I'm going to go to LinkedIn. I'm going to drop it on LinkedIn. So this is how you're able to make like one high-quality piece of content and find different expressions of it. And you can now do, like I said, you can do a talk on the stage. You can transform this into a podcast. And something that I may or may not do, I may just take my favorite Instagram posts and turn them into a book. So this is how I like to work, meaning to do as little work as possible and to get the most reward for my work. But I'm not going to just pick any page. I'm just going to pick the ones that people like the most. You see, so like some of you guys, if I were to tell you, go write a book today, you would be scared. That's a lot. That's a big commitment, man. I need to take a half year off work to do that. But if you do the work on a day-to-day basis, every couple of days, you create 10 pages of this book, and you only take the hits and you put it together, I think it's going to have a built-in audience for it that's already been tested. It's been vetted. So I want you to get into this idea. Like, don't be the crash test dummy. Set up the test and launch and see what happens. If it doesn't work, reset, try again, and just keep doing that over and over again. Make sense? Questions? Okay. Now, I'm going to get into this, right? So I screen captured a bunch of my tweets. The ones that have a lot of likes, I start to examine those as those become the bedrock for an Instagram post. Or not a bedrock, the jumping off point, the springboard for it, okay? So for me, my threshold is about 600-700 likes. If it gets past that, I have to consider it. So this is all I do. I put out thoughts very carelessly, I want to say, meaning that's what Twitter's for, just testing, bouncing ideas off. And if something sticks, I'm like, dang, okay, that worked. I screen capture, I put it into a different bucket, and it becomes my Instagram bucket of ideas. Woody Allen, the famous American director, writer, in the documentary, he talked about this. He said, everywhere I go, I just write down little scraps of ideas, little prompts, like a woman falls out of a car, and that's the beginning of the story. And he puts all of these things in his nightstand. And so when he was talking to the filmmaker, he opens this and he starts reading, oh, that's good, oh, that's terrible, oh, maybe I'll start writing this film. So he's collecting scraps. So to me, this is my version of collecting scraps to see if they work. Except for with Woody, he doesn't know if these ideas are any good. So I would encourage you to find your platform, whether it's speaking, live streaming, Instagram stories, Twitter, or anywhere else. Try this and see what happens. Okay. Now, I wrote on the top here something to remind me of something to talk to you about. Well, we're talking about social media, right? And people do say this, like, why aren't I getting social media? And I know why. Because you're not a social person. You are an anti-social media person, right? Because social, what does social mean? I go out, I put myself out there, I show up, I have conversations, I meet new people, I engage with them. That's what social media is. Or that's what being social means. And we just added the word media, so those same principles apply. So, very simple framework. Ask, listen, and then respond, okay? You want to ask really great questions, questions that make people think. Some people might say those are Socratic questions, right? Not yes or no questions, open-ended questions that spark conversation, that create dialogue. And then when they respond, listen to them. Read their comments, see what's happening, and then respond to their responses. And this is how a dialogue happens, so that they don't feel like you're in it just to promote. Now, you'll see people on social media, and all they do is talk about themselves. They don't even ask you a question. They're like, I have a new book. I have a new this. I'm going to be here. Isn't this great? I just landed this job. At what social function would you want to hang out with somebody like that? No social function. And so what you see is you see them posting all the time, 4 likes, 12 likes. Not interesting, right? So here it is. Somewhere in here is this post. When I was talking to you about this earlier, the conversation started on YouTube, and then I tried to sit there and sum it up, and I wrote it just like this, in case you guys are not following me. And look at this thing. It has 1.8 thousand likes. I'm not an idiot. I took something that worked, I made it work again, and I made it work one more time. And you have not seen the end of this thing. Okay? So I wrote here, I don't mind the expression, fake it till you make it, but it rubs some people the wrong way. The word fake conjures up impressions of fraudulent, misleading, and dishonest. If this bugs you, I suggest using believe it till you achieve it. Same idea, different words. 546 retweets. Now my brain is like, I got to do something with this. How do I make this into a carousel? And I was laying in bed one morning, and I was thinking about this. How do I do it? I know how I'm going to do it. I'm going to show you because I've already done it. This is like the cooking show where I tell you how to make the meatloaf, but the meatloaf is already made. Then I just pull it out. Here we go. It's page 2. Okay, I'll show you how I took that tweet and translated it into a carousel post. Again, notice the least amount of work. I'm using 3 typefaces. I'm living dangerously because usually I only use 2 typefaces. If you were paying attention, I've introduced a serif typeface, and so of course everybody's like, what serif typeface is that? Another conversation for another day. Now, let's get into this part, okay? I was thinking that the first image is my headline image. This is what is referred to as the hook. If you can't hook me in, you're done. I don't go to slide 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 because this is not interesting. So I have to think of the most bombastic, attention-grabbing way. This is the A in the IDA format, right? The framework, attention. You have to grab my attention. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say fake. I think that should stop people. Fake. And then I could just go right into the tweet or the Instagram carousel, but I won't because you know why? Because I got to make this last 10 slides long. So, fraud. Okay, you get an idea, and then imposter, and there's one more after this, like cheat. At this point, they must be thinking to themselves, where's this going? If you don't deliver on this right now, I'm going to kill you. So guess what? Okay, I asked this question. Is this what comes to mind when you hear the expression? What expression? Fake it till you make it? So I'm having a conversation with the audience, right? And then I explain it. I said, fake it doesn't mean to lie or to make claims you can't faithfully deliver on. It's an internal belief system and a reminder to act as if. That's what fake it means. It's not to create fraud for people, to make claims you can't deliver on. You know what's really cool? I would be stuck here. That's the kind of the end of my tweet. But what did I do? I posted that, and I read all the responses. And one of my friends, I guess friends now, Mr. Blair Enns, he writes in there some really smart responses. And I'm like, no, I know what I'm going to add to this one. I'm going to add what he said, right? So he says, Dan Sullivan talks about this. Summon the courage to commit to action, which builds competence, and then finally comes confidence. He says, Dan Sullivan, the consultant, talks about the 4 C's. Courage, commit, competence, and builds confidence. And all of a sudden, my dumb little thing sounds a lot smarter. And guess what? I cite him right here, both people, Blair Enns and Dan Sullivan. Even though I don't think they're all like on social media, you know, I still do my best to try to cite and credit. And then I finish it off with, in other words, believe it till you achieve it. And I go back to Blair Enns saying, commit before you're confident. So you see, like I'm saying one idea, fake it till you make it, like 3 or 4 different ways. I said, fake it till you make it, believe it till you achieve it, commit before you're confident, and the 4 C's, the courage to commit, competence, and confidence. You guys get this now? So this thing then gets me almost 200,000 reach, 235,000 impressions, 634 follows on this one dumb post. That's all type-based. That I swear to you, it took me less than 20 minutes. The longest thing that took me was, which serif typeface am I going to use? That one almost killed me. All right? So insider, type nerd stuff there. So you guys understand now? Okay? You take that piece of bread and you keep slicing and you put butter on one side. You're just like, okay, I'm going to serve it to you another way. I'm going to cut off the crust. That's a whole new sandwich for you. Okay? Questions or comments? Is it making sense? And thank you for your patience, because the internet just wants to jump to like minute 45. But that's not how I do things. That's not how I like to teach. Okay. Where are we? I think we're at the end. Okay, good. Save me before we get to the last slide. Okay.
So how can somebody that does not have that much following to validate
Oh, yes.
the
Yes. Thank you. Yes. It's right here. It's right here on the board. Okay. Now they're right here. Okay. I said ask, listen, and respond. Let's say you don't have a big enough platform or you don't even know what kind of questions to ask. Thank God the internet exists. Don't worry. Because Reddit is full of people asking questions. I should say that differently. Reddit is full of it, full of people asking questions. That's what it is. So I go sometimes onto Reddit and I see them asking a crazy question and I see how many of them respond. That's one I'm going to want to answer. If nobody cares about it, it doesn't get upvoted too much, like people don't care about it for whatever reason. So Reddit is a great place to find threads where people are very passionate and you can read their comments. So you're kind of getting this without doing any of this work. It's even lazier than my version. You don't have to do anything. You just sit there and read and figure out which ones pop. The work comes in trying to answer it. So I would scan the answers and see like, nope, these guys are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. I have a different point of view. Or no, it's been answered really well. I shouldn't touch this thing. It's done. Or I'm going to find a different way to say that. Or I'm going to find the source of who said that and make that interesting. Or I'm going to take that answer and find my own story that relates to that. That's what you do. So you can go to Quora. Quora is another place where people ask questions to get answers. You can see what's trending on Google, like what are people searching for as a jumping off point. But there's also this awesome website. It's called answerthepublic.com. And it's a really cool place to see like what people are interested in asking about. And it's, last time I checked, it was like this nodal thing, like little spikes, like mind mapping thing. And then you can look at it, you can click on those things and they blow up. And it's a really cool way to find out. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, sure.
No, I didn't. You want a refund on that or what?
That's what I kind of thought too.
Okay. Where's your mic? Yeah.
That's what I thought, that you would go through those channels to get ideas from.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
If you don't have the audience to.
Yeah. I'm going to use this word very carefully with a big asterisk on top of it. You can steal from here, or you can steal from yourself. So all I do is just add the good ones in a bucket somewhere. At some point I go back, I'm like, I need to make a carousel because my followers are dropping off. I'll pick one of these. Now, I realize that by doing this and sharing this, somebody who's paying attention to this could just go through my own feed and find which ones work and do this, which sometimes they do. So I have to say I have to beat them to the punch, because otherwise they'll just post this before I do. But I'm not that scared, because I feel like the way I say it or the way I design it or the images that I pick with the type will be different, hopefully better than what they do. But there are some people out there that are very good, if they could just do this thing, and it'll work for them. Okay, so let's do a quick recap, and I'll take any live questions from you guys or from our whoever's tuning in live. How many people we got watching the live stream today, Jonah? 500, okay, all right. Now, the recap, okay? We just went over this. So the AIDA framework, as far as I can tell, is credited to a guy named Elias St. Elmo Lewis, and it's a way of talking about advertising or marketing, okay? And since you have 10 slides to work with, I've broken it out like this, the IDA, and I've just changed one thing. So A is for attention, and I is to build interest, and D, he says to create desire. I just say, give me the detail. Just give me the details. And then the A is a call to action. Tell me what you want me to do now. That's it. It's that simple. And if you take away these two things, you really only have 8 frames to work with. That's why I draw a grade of 8. It makes sense now, right? Because I reserve the A to do the crazy, what some people would call clickbait, title, whatever, just to draw people in. And I continue to experiment with like what images draw people, what makes people stop in their feed and look at your thing that actually deliver on this. Because if you don't deliver on that, they'll just stop. You'll lose credibility. Okay, so the recap is this, that curating is okay, and copying is not. So don't mix these two up, please. Don't take somebody else's post and delete their credit and call it curating. It's not curating. That's not called inspired by. That's not called learning. That's just called stealing, and that's the worst kind of stealing. You're just being a plagiarist. Using somebody else's work, barely making any changes to it, and calling it your own. It's not helping you. I promise you, in the long run, it will only hurt you. Instead, it's totally okay to curate, meaning I've combed the internet and I found the best, most relevant things to this audience, and I'm just going to share that. And I'm going to make sure I create a win-win situation Win for me and win for the person who did it, because I want to make sure that all credit is given to them. And I'm going to help them grow as well. Now, I say it's okay, but the person that you're curating might feel differently, and each person will respond differently. Some people can say, take down that post. And I would suggest that if you get negative feedback on that, delete the post right away, apologize profusely, and don't do it again to that person. That's it. Because there are some internet beefs going on about people stealing other people's content like this all the time. I sometimes get into those threads, and it's horrible, okay? Now, the kind of copying that we want to do is not to copy the end result. We don't want to copy what it looks like. We want to copy the thinking, what inspired that person. We want to trace the roots back to do the genealogy of ideas and trace back the origin of where those ideas come from. If we can do that, we're doing something good for ourselves, and we're going to learn something. And we're going to be able to make posts that are much more interesting. They're going to stand out from what everybody else is doing. We just talked about this. The social part is to ask, to listen, and to respond. You don't even have to do the asking. You can just go on forums, groups, Reddit forums, and just listen and see what people are talking about, what's something that you know something about and can add another dimension to it. That's how you do it. And then when you have an idea, when something sparks, think about what people remember. Something that's emotional, something that's visual, and something that has a story. Those three things are key for people to remember what it is that you're doing. So try those ideas out. Don't be afraid to break some eggs, because they say you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs, and to test your ideas quickly and not to overcommit to any piece of content or idea that you have. Try it out. If it works, dive a little deeper. If it still works, keep going and take it all the way and leverage that one piece of content into as many things as you can. And I think there's probably, if you're very creative, no end in how you can repurpose content that works for you. Okay? And then last thing, and I said this last time, I'm just going to say it in different ways. Please be patient. People expect miraculous results overnight. Doesn't happen. And the opposite side of that is to be so precious with your posts that you never post anything. A lot of people think, oh, it's just not going to meet my standard, and I understand. So the analogy I'd like to make is that you're an actor on a stage. You think social media is opening night. It's rehearsals. And we're all rehearsing, and all the world's a stage. So it'll be totally okay. All right. If you guys enjoyed this live stream, this whiteboard session, I'm going to ask you guys for a huge favor, not only to check out our sponsor, but also to consider making a donation to support what it is that we do. I'm on Venmo. You guys can just send me money, which people do. Next time, I'm going to read off the list of people who have sent me money. I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Now, let's open it up to some questions here. What do you guys want to talk about? Relevant to what we just did. Go ahead.
So my question would be on that last slide that you have a call to action.
Yes.
What would be appropriate for a call to action? Comment, or what do you pull engagement? What do you do there?
Yeah, so what kind of call to action should we ask for? What makes sense to you? If you're selling a product, you might say, go click on this link. If you are like me, all I want you to do is to probably like it and make a comment. That's mostly what I want you to do. And to get a little stronger, you might ask them to share, which I think is like an airplane icon. I believe this is the highest ranking one, the second highest ranking, and then this would be the third. So it'd be like this, if you want to. Share, comment, like. But I tend to try to ask them just to do one thing. I see these slides now where at the end, the call to action is like, make sure you ring the notification, message to somebody, comment, and then like. It's like just one thing. Just one, okay? That's all I'm going to ask for, because otherwise it's too much. And it's weird because you would think that everybody remembers to like, comment, and share, but they don't. So guys, don't forget to like, comment, and share, and hit the bell notification. And then they do it. That's how it happens, because we just remember, oh yeah, all right. And they'll do that. So a link would work. If you're in the creative service business, you could say something like, I design logos for a living. If this is of value to you, click on the link in the bio. That's all you need to do. You're not going to close somebody right here. The carousels are not meant to be your direct path to money. It's an indirect path, not a direct one. Oddly enough, I don't do creative service work anymore, but in December, I got hit up by 5 different people or companies, some very sizable companies, asking for help with their social posting and their design. And I just referred them all away. Some were like $5,000 a month, some were more. Some were one-time deals, some were retainers. So it's really weird. Like, I'm not looking for work on Instagram. I'm just looking to grow an audience and to teach and help people. And in doing so, even the unintended consequences, people want to hire us, me. Is that okay for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you feel that posts that do not have an ask have a better engagement, or no? Or you like actual ask of your product or service? You know what I mean? Like, not an ask of like tag your friend that needs to listen to this, but more of like, or do you think that like engagement works better than trying to pull the person? That's what I'm just trying to grasp.
I don't know. I don't have enough data to be able to answer that in any real way. But when I was going to launch an Instagram masterclass, which I'm still going to, I say, you know, look out for the Instagram masterclass. Now, there's no masterclass. There's no link. There's no sales page. I haven't even written it yet. But people keep asking me about it. So it's telling me that that does work. So if you create something that's valuable, that's in alignment with your service or product, people are going to become curious. Like, I want to learn this. I want to sit in a room with you and let's write a carousel together from beginning to end. Critique, review, add images, design it, and create a template. I'd like to do that with you sometime. So I say, I'm going to do a masterclass. And then people become very interested in that. So I don't have any data. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, so in the ask, listen, respond framework, when you're responding to questions, I was wondering, have you ever run into a scenario where there's a question that's really hot and you know that if you answer a certain way, it's just going to get a lot of engagement because it's going to fire people up a certain way. But in your head, you're also like, that's not exactly what I want to say on this topic, or that's not how I would answer the question. And if you do run into that, do you stick to what is completely true to you? Do you find a balance? You twist things a certain way so that it resonates more? How do you personally deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to try to take a step back and tell you my philosophy on this and then get into the answer, okay? My philosophy on this is that you, all of you, are complex beings with lots of thoughts and feelings, and you're not entirely consistent with yourself even. One day you might respond to a challenge one way, and another day you would respond completely in a different way. So I think we're like this full spectrum human being, and we only show the world a very small sliver of that spectrum. Like we say, of the spectrum of light, the visible light that we can see is very small, right? We know that. It's very small because we can't see infrared, we can't see X-ray. There's a lot of stuff we can't see. So the visible spectrum is quite small relative to the spectrum. So when I'm here with you, I'm showing you a version of me, not my whole version. When I'm with my children, it's a different version. None of them are fake and none of them are 100% true. It's because it's too much for anybody to know all of you at once in one sitting, right? So I think when somebody asks you a question, you have to ask yourself, what spectrum do I want to show? Do I want to show that person I'm an experienced filmmaker? So you put your filmmaker hat on, you talk to them super geeky about that, or I don't know if you're a dad or married or any, like there's different sides, and that's the beauty of life. It's not that I want to go home and talk to my wife like this way, and I don't talk to her like this way, right? I don't come busting in the door. I'm like, hey, honey, what's up? I'm happy to see you. It's a Friday day, and I don't talk like that, right? But on a show like this, I want to bring some energy to what I'm saying so that people don't fall asleep. I'm fighting the preservation of calories. People want to go to sleep right now. So I have to say things in a certain way. I also know that on social media, I'm not trying to be mean-spirited. I'm trying to be direct because I think there's a lot of wishy-washy answers out there that are not clear. In saying it directly, I know I'm going to offend people. Not by my intention, but I just know that's the consequence of it. And I have to be okay with that. And that's not okay for all of you. I'm secure enough in my career and my life that I can risk saying things that will piss people off. I even put it in my description sometimes. I am a cultural agitator. I say things to stir things up so that people start thinking. You know, to have critical thinking means to be critical of what you think. So when somebody asks you a question that's very thought-provoking, it will piss some people off, and some people will say, that's an amazing thing. Like, I gained so much clarity because of that. I'll give you another example. You've seen videos like this when people talk about how to grow your Instagram following, and they generally give you like super like cut and paste answers. Like they just read an article somewhere on the internet and just put it out. It's all pretty garbage, right? And they'll do it in 15 minutes, and they get lots of views. And I watch that. I could do the same thing. But instead, I'm doing an hour-and-a-half live stream with you guys with 11 pages of like thought-out ideas, and that's how I want to teach. So I'm going to show this kind of more professorial side, and to go really deep when other people go really shallow. But that's just the spectrum I want to show, okay? So I think you need to go and ask yourself, what brand am I comfortable with sharing with the world? And then step into it in small stages. Don't go full crazy like all you, because people will freak out. That's all. Does that help you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good question. The lovely couple, you guys want to ask a question? And then we're going to wrap up, okay?
How about as far as the look of all of these and the topics, should it all be like niched? Or if I have a like idea that I want to express through the carousel, does it matter if it's design and then philosophy? You know what I'm saying, as far as gaining followers and stuff?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this question in two ways. What I think you should do and what I do, and they're not the same. I think you should go super niche. That when somebody scrolls up on your feed, they're going to check out a couple of things, and if it looks like what they want, they will follow you. And your whole point is to grow a follower, right? Because they're subscribed to your channel. But if you post something great on philosophy, and the next thing is design, and then it's about cooking and something else, they could all be great posts, mind you. But I didn't come here for that. And so you're going to get, I think, greater velocity in followers if you just stick to one thing. And there's a bunch of people like James Lewis. You guys know who James Lewis is? He does hand-painted like 3D lettering. He's really great. That's all he does. And he has way more followers than I have. And then you see a person like Stefan Kuntz, who does like lettering, hand lettering too, way more followers than me. Logo Inspirations, over 1 million followers. All he shows is logos. So I'm the weirdo who is interested in lots of different things. So for me, I tend to post things on a couple different topics. And actually, I have different keynote decks labeled this way, so I know like what keynote deck I'm going to open up, because it could get very confusing. But that's just me, okay? So I have one for marketing, one for business, one for design, one for mindset. I know it's crazy. And one for Instagram, like a masterclass. I think I'm missing one in here, but business design, yeah, I think that's what I have. So I have at least 5 decks, and the decks are getting like really dense now, because once it has too many slides, I duplicate it and I create number 2 and then delete the other ones, so that there's business 1, 2, 3, and etc. Because opening the files becomes pretty massive. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm sure this is not helping my followers, but I don't care. I have other ways to make money, right? So I would say for you to pick a lane and go super deep. The more niche you go, the easier it is for you to grow a following. Okay? All right. Any other question? I'm like super thirsty now. Okay. One more?
Yeah, I have
okay,
another
bring
question.
us home. This is it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question I was going to ask is, when you select which questions to answer,
Yep.
if you have a question that someone has asked you, or a couple of people have asked you, and you know that it's not going to hit the majority of your audience, but you know you can really impact a small portion of your audience, would you go all in on that? Do you table that? Is there another way that you communicate that? What would you do in that kind of situation?
Yeah, when you say you know, it's like you have a hunch and you never know for sure.
Yeah.
Because I posted things before that I think this one's not going to go anywhere, and I'm embarrassed and I'll delete it later. And then it takes off. I'm like, I don't know why it would take off. And to date, you know, my best performing post ever is one that I didn't even write. Greg Gunn wrote it. And that one is slaying. So I'm like, well, I thought people were going to get mad at me for sharing a guest post because they're used to a certain thing. And now I'm allowing a couple of people to send me carousels that I will share their carousel on my feed. And I keep thinking, this is not my design. It's not even my voice. I don't even believe in this. But they're like, love it. Oh, okay. So you just never know. And I just think that we falsely believe that the certainty of the outcome, I'm not so sure. If you feel like somebody really needs it and you have a really good answer, give it a shot. Put it out there and see what happens. And after a couple of times, it just is dead, delete it, and then don't do it again. But you just never know. Okay, we're just still in this place of exploration, and I would caution you, like, don't narrow down so fast on what you think is going to work until you have evidence to say, yeah, this is causal, like this and this are connected. Okay?
Yeah, thank you so
All
much.
right. Okay, guys, that's it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next time.